Here we go. We're back with Objective 6. Now, Objective 6 is a little different because you'll have these here, but like we'll take also some time in class to discuss the New Deal programs in detail. There's so much going on there. So, anyway, New Depression, New Deal with it. So, FDR is elected because of the mistakes of Hoover, and people wanted somebody kind of more or less working. So, let's jump into this. Now, Objective 6.1, the breakdown of the stock market crash. And so you can see here, here's this famous meme, all right? He wins the lottery and invested all of it in a bank on October 6, 1923. If we know anything on October 29th, 1929, the banks crashed, so he would have lost all of his money. Much like the clips I've shown you of Cinderella Man, Jim Braddock losing all of his money and having being to reduce to kind of different labor. Now, what is the problem with the market? And that is to brace yourself. A margin call is coming. Not winter, but a margin call. So we have to talk about what this is. So we've already discussed how the brokers get you into it. Now, the brokers would get you into it by promising that you could buy with on margin. You pay for a share with a loan. You only put a small amount down on the loan, promise that your return of investment would cover the original all price of the loan, and then you would come out okay. The stock market is like a body. When your body runs on food, when you get hungry, your stomach growls and says, "Hey, I'm hungry." You must get food, and then the stomach's like, "Hey, I'm good now." All right? So the stock market runs on money. When it starts running low on money, things start going awry, and the brokers are told, more or less by the banks, we need money. We need you to do this. So in order to do this, the banks would call the broker to get the money in full. This is called a margin call. You see why it's scary. If you cannot pay that money, they're going to take what you own. In this case, they're going to foreclose you, which is a loss of assets, generally a home to a bank because of inability to pay a loan back. And we all know once you lose that home, you call it a Hooverville. You see how this is all connecting now. Now for the farmers, farms were hit the hardest. They had too much surplus before the Depression, and they foreclosed on their farms. So the president at this time tried to design to help farmers called the Ford-Macumber tariff. Here it is, right? The flexible tariff, up or down, doesn't really matter how it works. It actually only helped businesses, and hence you can see who's actually controlling. Where it is set at are the business people and not farmers. Now, Objective 6.2. Herbert Hoover will respond. And so you can see Patrick here, our President Hoover. When Hoover was president, I'm not going to do much. And then he decides to cross the nothing off and actually do something. But it was too little, too late. Now, Hoover is elected, and as he's elected, he comes up with an idea called rugged individualism. This is his domestic idea, and it basically is the new version of the American dream. Which the American dream was what people came here. They said, hey, you go to America, you'll get these things, you can work hard, and you can get whatever you want. Now, rugged individualism rests on the fact that the government would not get involved. This would help the best and the brightest to develop with little or no restrictions. So, you see here Willy Wonka, oh, you promoted rugged individualism in the Great Depression. Tell me how it will help a country with no money. So in order for this to work, rugged individualism, there has to be money. So granted, if the 1920s had continued, rugged individualism sounds great. But when we need money fast, rugged individualism is not a good idea. Now, too little, too late. He is going to do these things you see here in the picture. Here's Herbert Hoover. We have the RFC, Reconstruction Finance Corporation. Government helps with businesses and loans. You also have home bank loans to try to keep people from foreclosing. You have Federal Reserve credit, and then also the government economy. And the whole idea is to cut through this log of the Depression. Now, all of this is part of trickle-down economics. The whole idea of trickle-down is that we would help businesses at the top, freeing up money that would trickle down to the rest of society. Now, he will also promote government building projects. One of the famous ones that will be completed after him, and its name for him is the Hoover Dam. Now, Objective 6.3, we now get FDR. So you see FDR rolling, they hating. Um, and I'm really hoping that they're saying FDR rolling in a car and not the fact he was confined to a wheelchair, because that would be messed up if you went down that road. If you thought that, shame on you. So, FDR and the New Deal. When he is inaugurated president, he tells us the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And so, as promised, he had a New Deal where the government would actively try to solve the Depression. It was divided into New Deal programs called Relief, Recovery, and Reform. Now, relief is money given directly, an early precursor of welfare. Recovery to get back on your feet, and reform is change. Now, the 20th Amendment is going to come in this play because FDR wants our inauguration date pushed from March to January so he can get started. They will. He also starts a tradition called the 100 Days. First 100 days in office is generally how we judge a president, what they're going to do, what are their big things. Now, FDR's cabinet, or his advisors, were known as the Brain Trust, and they're very diverse. There was African Americans, there were socialists, there were immigrants, there were Native Americans. I mean, it was kind of everything. They helped to create some of the New Deal programs, and is kind of a precursor of compromise and what this country is built on. Now, FDR was big on communication. Guys, as someone who's been married now almost, 15 years, communication is key. Got to use it, guys and girls. You have to talk. You have to talk to each other. You have to listen how it works. Now, in this case, Calvin Coolidge is going to bring the radio into the White House for one of the first broadcast things. FDR is going to use the radio for what he is going to call fireside chats. This was a discussion on the radio to motivate the American people. He would go and say, here's the programs we did, and especially during World War II, he's going to use it to talk about how the war was going and what they were going to try to do. Now, JFK, later in the 1960s, will be bringing TV cameras into the White House, and this is what we call the Camelot. We called Kennedy's White House Camelot, and he was King Arthur, and etc. Anyway, the fireside chats have now essentially become the State of the Union addresses. And in fact, President Obama, when he is elected, is going to do another, he called it a fireside chat, but it was a radio or a TV broadcast from the White House, one being the first one done from the Oval Office since the 1960s. But there we go. Now, FDR has a new economic theory. It's called Keynesian economics. Now, John Maynard Keynes is from England, and his idea is to spend money to make money. Or deficit spending. And you can see there the Oxymoron Club. How do you spend money you don't have? Now, I always tell a way of people remember is that if someone is generally depressed or going through something, they may try to compensate for that by going and spending their way out of depression, buying things that would make their life a little easier to get their mind off things and that are going on around them. Now, deficit spending is spending money you do not have on the ideal that the jobs will create and help to generate money. So, FDR's New Deal programs were created out of imagination. And the whole idea was get people working, and eventually it would start generating revenue and things in the future. What I mean by that is, if you go and make a road or a bridge as part of a New Deal product or a program, that road and bridge will have to be maintained forever. So you have created jobs, okay? If you're going to go build a building, if you're going to do whatever it is, then that's the whole idea. And so some of it has worked over the years, and some of it did not work over the years. But deficit spending from this point on will be kind of a backbone of most Democratic presidents who have won since FDR. Now, like I said, we'll cover the New Deal programs in class and spend some time on this. And so the last one here is Objective 6.4, the New Deal Legacy and the Critics. And here we have Huey P. Long, every man a king in his own castle, the Kingfisher himself. So the New Deal legacy is regulation. Regulation everywhere. Thank you, Buzz. But federal government has more regulation in the economy and society since the New Deal. The federal government has safety nets in place to prevent another depression of this magnitude. We have had several recessions, maybe depressions, but nothing on the scale that we did of the one that lasted from 1929 until about 1946. Okay? Now, FDR is going to take on the Supreme Court in this. The question is FDR becoming too powerful, right? So, Butler is going to sue the United States over a New Deal program called the Agricultural Adjustment Administration, and that's ruled unconstitutional. All right? The Chester Poultry Company versus the U.S. is going to rule the NRA or the Blue Eagle unconstitutional. Now, this is a problem. Remember, we talked about babies and things. This is FDR's baby, and they basically said, hey, you got an ugly baby, dude. I mean, dang, okay? So FDR is going to ask Congress for a court-packing plan, and that's the subject of this right here. And so you have a packed court, and you can see they all kind of look dummy, and they're going to do this. Now, under this court-packing plan, for every justice over the age of 70 who had not retired, he proposed adding a new justice. There are 9 Supreme Court justices. This would have brought the number up to 15. Now, if you think about this, of the 15, 6 have been put in by him. Naturally, they're going to vote the way he wants. He needs to swing 2, and he will never again have anything voted unconstitutional. Now, Congress was not keen on this. They thought that this would mean he would be becoming too powerful, becoming almost like a king. But guys, this can happen, and even today it can happen. But he didn't have enough votes in Congress put in place, but it is a major thing to discuss. Now, the critics, who were critical of this? And so we had the Kingfisher, we'll get to him last. Father Charles Coughlin, FDR was too radical and needs to help more. Okay? And so what Father Charles Coughlin is he is a radio priest. And he said, too radical, you need to help more of the people. Stop trying to focus on what you have. Dr. Francis Townsend wants a retirement income called the Townsend Plan to help the elderly. This will be taken into account, and eventually it will be known as the Social Security Act, the Social Security Administration, which is still used today. And then Huey Long. Huey Long said FDR is not radical enough. He's not doing enough. And this is socialism. If you've heard Bernie Sanders is kind of a democratic socialist, and one of the things he promotes is free college. Huey Long would have been the Bernie Sanders of his time, just a little bit younger, right? So in the Share Our Wealth plan, every man would be made a king of his own castle. That means everyone would have a house, everyone would have a car, everyone would have a certain guaranteed salary, etc. Now you go think, if everything is given to you, do you appreciate it more or do you appreciate it less? And that's a very interesting kind of self-reflection we need to make. But nonetheless, there it is. There are critics.